Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And Jody Lynn is off this week, as she has been for the past couple of weeks, as she's been traveling, but she'll be back again next week. We'll look forward to that. In the meantime, I am joined today by Stephen Hoskinson, who has a rather interesting background that we'll get into in a moment, but he is the director of education for an organization called Organic Intelligence. And it's all about an alternative way to look at healing, particularly psychological healing, but also physical healing. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. It's kind of up our alley too, because we like to explore this topic from a wide range of angles, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a different angle today. So I'm looking forward to it. Steve, welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and so curious, to see how our conversation will unfold, and just appreciate the generosity of your vision in creating these conversations. So,
well, thank you. Well, I mean, you joined the club because we have no idea how the conversation is going to go either. So, I mean, this is like an exploration for all of us. And 5 minutes from now, we'll probably find out. But right now, I have no idea.
Awesome. Great to leap into the abyss of mystery with you.
Absolutely. So give us a little bit of your background and how you ended up doing what you're doing, and make sure you leave in all of the gory details because they're fun.
Yes. Fortunately, we're built on our errors. We're built on the learning that we get from our mistakes. And so what can I say? I've learned a lot.
Which is a good thing. Congratulations.
Yes. Yep. And live to tell the tale.
That's right. It's a good friend of mine likes to point out, if you're still breathing, your mission isn't done. So well done.
Yeah. Well, may we all be breathing for a long time yet to come.
That's right.
It really, it's just essentially my nature somehow to care about people. I remember my parents, I think they were a little worried about me as a kid and just going, Steve, you have to look out for number one. You have to look out for number one. And I don't dispute that wisdom. And there's a story in the Mahabharata where at the end, Yudhishthira, the hero of this epic story of creation and destruction, all he has been wanting is to bring his family together and to somehow be faithful. And at the very end, he's there at the gates of heaven. And they say, Yudhishthira, you were faithful, you can ascend. And he says, fantastic, it's been my life's dream. It's just one thing, my family will need to come with me. They're like, no, sorry, it's your faithfulness. So come on up, leave your family, they'll work out their thing. He's like, I ain't coming. And he said, I'm not going. Without my family, I'm not going. And then truly the heavens parted, and there was the sound of voice that said, that was your final test.
Okay.
Welcome all. And so, it is really then the facilitation of my family that brought love and warmth and everybody doing the best they can and a lot of forgiveness that got me here, and ultimately supported me to go to college and develop this compassion really for other people, which was, by the way, at the same time trying to figure out my own disruption, my own anxiety or depression, and just the wandering through the halls of self-exploration, knocking on doors. And fortunately, a lot of people answered. In college, I ran into one of my mentors then, who was Maya Angelou.
Really?
Yeah, at Wake Forest University, and just really helping because I was really concerned about the status of racism in the United States, and especially in the South there. And so really got a lot of support there. And she wrote a letter for me to get me into clinical psychology school, and probably the reason I got in.
Wow.
And and then I began to study clinical psychology because although my original impulse was actually sort of based in religion or spirituality, like
Mhm.
justice and the need of support and care for people that are underserved. I got into clinical psychology thanks to Dr. Angelo, and began to study what is then healing going to really look like. And I got right to the end of what I could get to in clinical psychology and academic psychology, and then began to ask the questions like, what is this mind body connection?
Mhm.
What is that? How is it that we can, realize, the heights of spiritual awareness, but I can't like pay my bills, or I can't get up in the morning, or,
Yeah.
like the disconnection between those was really key. And so I began to, I say to people, I left graduate school. I ran away from graduate school and joined the somatic psychology circus, and began to learn somatic psychology, somatic
Yeah.
approaches to trauma, and really study in Aikido and other ways where the union of body and mind was foremost. And the result of that search is what I guess we'll talk some more about, which is organic intelligence. And
That's quite a combination too. I mean, you touched on a number of different fields, if you will, or areas of interest that I can see how they would intertwine. They'd come together. But this is not your typical curricula we're talking about here. This is fairly unique to you, I think.
it is indeed, and it is also, I think, as it's this east-west blendo. It's
Mm.
this understanding somehow of Zen and Lao Tzu. It's chopping wood and carrying water. What is the extraordinary that's in the ordinary? Or Martin Luther said, like, if you were to see a grain of wheat, you would go mad with wonder. How the transcendent is in the ordinary and everyday. And to make
Mm.
that a practice, that takes a little support, and that's why we have all this curriculum and courses of organic intelligence.
You said a couple things too that kind of click something in my mind, and I want to start by exploring them. You were talking a bit, for instance, about looking out for number one, but also having the angle of compassion, particularly compassion for others. But you also hinted at compassion for yourself, and that's what rang the bell for me, because one of the subtopics I've been exploring both personally and here on the podcast lately is the idea that we have a wonderful value known as kindness. And there is renewed interest, I would say, in practicing kindness. But there's an aspect of it that doesn't seem to be getting quite as much attention. And for me, it's a big deal. And that aspect is kindness toward yourself.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is I was noticing something about this very recently. If you don't have a practice of kindness toward yourself, when it comes to being kind toward others, it's a chore.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. It's
Yeah.
hard to, I mean, you can do it. That's where, I mean, some 30, 40 years ago, that's where the idea of practice random acts of kindness came from.
Yeah.
But the problem with that approach is you're constantly having to renew yourself in order to do it. Whereas if you take the time to not only develop yourself, but also develop kindness and respect for yourself, and not aim for perfectionism all the time, and not aim for, tearing yourself down or pushing yourself hard to the point where you just kind of, are killing yourself and so forth. But when you scale that back and start appreciating whatever it is you have been able to do, and not setting high standards that are going to tear you apart to try to reach them, then all of a sudden kindness becomes really easy, not just for yourself, but because you've been kind to yourself. It's easy. You don't even have to think about being kind towards somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we should just stop the recording right now. If we get nothing else, that's a home run right there. That's the essence of it, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah.
Oh man, that's so good. And we work at this by in organic intelligence by describing this really radical and maybe heretical sounding notion, which is the job is enjoyment.
Mm.
The job is enjoyment. We have such an ambivalent, I think, especially in the West, especially maybe in North America, given our well, and you would know this sort of Puritan roots that are there. It's like hard work that'll get you to heaven. That's what really counts, you know. Self-denial, yeah, that's worth something. But you're
Well, I can
really
tell you exactly what it's worth from my own experience. It's worth destroying your business in the 2008 financial crisis. It worked really well for that.
yeah. So ultimately, maybe it does work.
Yeah, it just depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish. I mean,
Well, look at you now. You know, nothing to complain about. You know, you've arrived. In fact, that's so good.
well,
Yeah,
actually, I have
and
plenty to complain about. I just don't bother because what's the point? I mean, that's the whole point of the compassion, I think, and particularly the kindness, the self kindness is you let up on things to complain about because you don't really need to anymore.
that's right. That's so brilliant. I love that. And you know, we look at what makes it easier to be kind to others and oneself simultaneously. There's no
Mhm.
difference in the end. And so we believe here, and what we work on is the way that our physical system, our biological system feels. Like when you feel unwell, or you feel anxious, or you feel under resourced, or you know, separated from a sense of abundance, all of that to us boils down to physical. All
Mhm.
of that is simply an expression of your biological system. And what we have are the tools to help that biology, to understand the way our biology works, and to help it work better, more efficiently, and thus more happily. And so the daily dose of happy is this understanding of how our biology grows, and it's actually the opposite of what most of psychotherapy or trauma therapy is saying, because it really is looking at like the job is enjoyment and cultivating states of pleasure, not because pleasure is better, although it is, but because we grow capacity in that way. We
Mhm.
actually grow biological bandwidth through naturally increasing steps of tolerance of feeling well. You know, there's a notion of working within the window of tolerance, which is like, oh, how much is not too much? That's not our goal. Our
Mhm.
goal is the window of enjoyment that says we actually grow. We do our training not by that which you just suggested, which is the efforting of the barbell over your head, you know, but is actually the joy of expression and the lighter lift that comes through naturally occurring appreciation and pleasure. And we cultivate a mindset that helps us in that direction, and that's how we grow.
And it's also worth noting, there are for some people, the idea of lifting that barbell is the expression of joy. That is the fun part.
And when you make that shift, everything becomes possible.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, that's really cool. I like this. I'm also curious to know, particularly the work that you guys do at the organic. What's the official name? I mean, I know
It's
what I was reading off the profile.
organic intelligence, yeah,
Just
or
organic intelligence. That's the
OI.
official name.
We abbreviate it to OI sometimes.
Okay, so from the perspective of the work that you guys do at OI at Organic Intelligence, um, what do you find is I guess I'd call it the cornerstone, the piece that keeps holding it together each time that you're working with individuals? Because one of the things that I picked up from your profile is you're looking at wellness and health from a different perspective, one that I like a great deal.
Yep.
But how does that tie into the actual work that you end up doing with people?
Well, thank you for the question. The cornerstone is this really great news, and you'll find it at the heart of all the major wisdom traditions, which says that within yourself is pre-existing wholeness. That is, we're not trying to manufacture some kind of goodness. We're just trying to get out of the way enough to discover it and rediscover it again and again. And that wholeness and goodness is then the font, the source then of the love for ourselves and for others. And when we begin to discover that, and then we begin to live a different life because we are supported rather than all of that efforting. I'm kayaking down the river instead of, trying to swim upstream.
Which makes a difference. It's also a question that I find is very relevant to people like us later in life, because I don't know about you, I've really noticed, particularly among peers, people around my own age, just how rapid health decline has become. And on one hand, it's kind of alarming to watch, because I keep thinking to myself, well, what am I doing that they're not doing? But the other part of it is, well, yeah, what am I doing that they're not doing? Because I don't experience it. I mean, I'm just as active and vibrant as I ever was. I mean, the hair has turned white, but other than that, I'm pretty much the same guy I always was.
Mhm.
And I know intuitively it's tied to mindset. It's tied to the way I look at the world and think about the world and interact with the world. And that has a direct impact on my health and on my wellness and my well-being.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a clinical way of putting that together. So I'm asking you, can you tie that together clinically for us?
I think so. The thing that we look at, because it's, organic intelligence that we're talking about, is because we're really, as say coaches, the coaches that we train to sit and see a person in their wholeness. And that's radical, because the mind has a habit, and the science is showing it's a cognitive bias toward what's wrong. So that what's wrong attention, or the negativity bias, that is something we have to contend with. And so our coaches are simply practicing seeing a system that is actually given the chance in a process of self-organization. But the clues, the biological clues of the path of and the states of self-organization are missed because our eye is off the ball. Our eye is on the fender bender, or our eye is on the media story, or the eye is on, the political system. There are any number of things that are wrong that we could be paying attention to. And firstly and foremost, without ignoring what's actually happening in the world, we need to attend to the recognition of this nature of well-being that each of us has. Clinically or technically, we look at a notion in science that is called allostasis. And that says that the brain, it partly says that it's really clear from neuroscience now, the brain is not the brain of like, oh, look out for, where's the saber-toothed tiger? I've got all the enemies around, and I've got to be, prepared for trouble and bring back balance somehow, or reset, all of this doing, I think, is completely missing the mark. And allostasis says it's because our brain is not the make it right again brain, but rather the predicting brain. And that is, in psychology, there's a lot of talk about self-regulation, like, oh, I gotta bring all this balance. It's a lot of work, and good work to be done for sure. And the other aspect, and I think that's what you're looking at, that's so unique, is the notion of predictive regulation. That is, the brain is looking into the world, looking into the environment, and making micro predictions about what's coming, and then getting you ready for it. So
Okay.
brain is the predicting brain, and then is adjusting your physiology to get you ready for that. And when that happens, then you feel ready. Like, whatever comes, I'm ready. That takes a while. And the biggest single help that we can do to collaborate with and align with that basic brain function is something that is completely heretical in the world of therapy. And that is paying attention to what's outside of you and not what's inside. That is, we have to build a bridge between our internal world and that external assessment that the brain's trying to do. And that bridge is the orientation to the environment through the senses. So the bridge is connecting to the environment through the senses. And therapy, and I've done a lot of it personally and professionally, and therapy says, pay attention to your feelings, pay attention to your thoughts, pay attention to your sensations, and all of that is the road to uncovering what the problem was, and then somehow that's going to be curative. I don't think that's the case. That was Freud's formulation 100 years ago. I think now neuroscience is much clearer on pointing to how we can collaborate with a biology that has 1 billion years of evolution behind it, that knows how to heal fundamentally and get us back in touch with what is most fundamental, which is a sense of wellness and creativity and engagement and joy and connection, and a full ability to experience both the ups and downs of life. Right? This isn't like Pollyanna, like, oh, just look on the bright side of life. This is the capacity to be with life in its infinite variety, from grief and despair to joy and ecstasy. And so but that's a function of bandwidth. And by using orientation, we begin to set the stage for the body's own recognition of how bandwidth grows. And so that's what we do. We can grow the CPU of the human being so that we have greater bandwidth. And when you have greater bandwidth, things that were a problem aren't so much the problem that they used to be.
There's a few things that you said there that I think are worthy of looking at in greater detail. I want to start from the viewpoint of what I'm going to call that bridge that you described between the inside and the external. And the reason I think that bridge is so important, I'm going to take the bridge away for a second. Now, you made reference to, I think you labeled it as the Freudian approach, where everything is internal. And with that approach, there is no external, it's all internal. And that is problematic because it's basically divorcing you from what actually happens in your life. It's assuming that everything that goes on in your life is going on inside you and that there's nothing going on outside of you. And that can be very problematic. But there's also the flip side of it, which is that's where everything is external and nothing is internal. And I would even submit that that's a much more common phenomenon today. People working on themselves by working on the external and just blocking off working on the internal, which is the hard part. You know, not wanting to have to even deal with that part. I'll just do the external. You know, I see a lot of people, particularly in spiritual realm, because I'm part of that spiritual realm, who are doing all this external spiritual stuff, but they don't do any of the internal work.
Yeah.
So the bridge that you were referring to, the bridge is missing in both of those cases.
Yes. Yes, that's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Because in the end, probably those who are working in the spiritual realms are probably saying there is no internal, there is no external, right? There's just what is, and the whole notion of internal and external is just an illusion of this our lenses and the duality that is apparent in what's happening. But we don't mistake that for ultimate reality, and so that bridge includes a quality or an ethos of both and so I really appreciate what you're saying, because that bridge then creates the both and. There is both external and internal, and ultimately as we play along that both and, the bridge disappears and the internal disappears and the external disappears, and then you just get something that's probably like the background in your video right now.
Yeah.
The universe, the galaxies around there.
Yeah, that's to remind me that the universe has my back. That's why I throw that up there every time. But
sure
yeah, and it works really nicely for me. But carrying on with the theme that we're talking about here, I want to kind of take it to the next level, if you will, in that when we are exploring this bridge and we're exploring the connection between the internal and external, it reminds me of what science has been telling us about how the brain is organized and how the heart is organized. I mean, one of the main things, for instance, that they've taught us, and they were kind of surprised when they first discovered it, is that the heart actually has more neurons than the brain, which, like, what happened there? That kind of threw everybody. And I'm not sure science has actually embraced what that means yet, but they did notice it. They say, well, this is noteworthy. We're not quite sure what to do with it yet, but this is noteworthy. But when you're talking about what you were talking about, that when I think about it in terms of the bridge between the internal and external, I kind of associate the heart as being more of the internal work, the brain being the external work, and that neuron compatibility, I guess I might call it, or perhaps the bridge between the heart neurons and the brain neurons, is kind of the physical expression of that what do we call it? A spiritual bridge. I'm not sure what we call that bridge, but whatever that bridge is, it has a physical expression in terms of the neurons in the heart connecting to the neurons in the brain.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. It's actually, if you look at our logo, it is that.
Is it really?
Yes. And it is this, the union of opposites, that is the both and one of them, and one of the most important ones for the way we understand healing, is the way that the opposites, the apparent opposites, work together and seamlessly in a continuum. And so, for instance, for the brain, one of the most, and arguably the most organizing rhythm for the brain is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia.
Okay.
And respiratory sinus arrhythmia is simply that when you breathe in, the heart rate increases. When you breathe out, the heart rate decreases. And there is that rhythm of up and down, and the flowing between acceleration and deceleration is the rhythm of sync in our biological system, that when it is working well, we feel well, and when it is desynced, we're a mess. And so all of that we're looking at, including the bridge of orientation connecting to the environment, creates more possibility of that modulation, beginning biologically and including that with the respiration and the heart rate, which then helps all the systems of the brain sync up and organize.
Wow. So you guys have definitely taken it to another level than I was even aware of, which is very cool. I like that.
Well, we're taking it to your level, is what it is.
No, but it's fun. I mean, one of the things that I've talked about a lot here on the show is loving the different perspectives I get from guests who come onto the program, because I learn so much from those perspectives. And I do like to make the comment that most often I learn more from the ones that I disagree with, which pisses me off, but I do learn more from them. Yet there are times like this when, I mean, I'm like on the page with you. I'm on the same page with what you're talking about, and I'm still learning from that. And I like that, because it also reinforces you don't have to be in opposition in order to learn. You can learn when everything is synchronous too. It works both ways. Learning is learning. It's not tied to one or the other.
Right. Thank you. And both ways, learning both ways. And this inclusive framework is just so key, because we're becoming, I believe, more increasingly polarized in society. And the ethos that we're describing is the knitting together of the polarization of the us versus them, and the haves and have-nots. And we can really create that bridging by just, some knowledge and good conversation like this.
So let's talk about how to take these ideas, because these are kind of esoteric, what we're talking about right now. We tied some physicality into it, but for the most part, these are fairly esoteric ideas. Let's tie them into a more down-to-earth, real-world thing for individuals, which is what you guys do anyway. I mean, it's part of what your coaching thing is all about, right? So let's talk about, how do you actually take these, highfalutin ideas and turn them into something you can actually do every day?
Wow. That's my favorite thing. Thank you so much. I was raised as a Methodist. And so if you want something methodical that works, that's practical, that's our jam. So my ancestors would be so happy about this. Thank you. So the practical way is to understand how that orientation happens first. That itself is just kind of mind-blowing. We're gonna pay attention to what's happening in the outside world by using our senses. We call it coming back to the senses. And then our system begins to balance a bit. And when it does that, then something else becomes available. And this was maybe one of the greatest discoveries that shocked me, which is that people began to describe, once they got orientation on board especially, they would describe in therapy, they would get distracted And they would go, "Oh, sorry, I knew I was talking about my parents, but
Mm.
I just saw this butterfly out there. Did you see it? Or maybe that was a hummingbird. Well, it was a hummingbird, I think. Did you see that?" And you know, and therapeutically, I would be going, avoiding the problem. Yes. And until one day I go, maybe they know what they're doing. Maybe
Mm.
that system is intelligent. And I began to look with them at the hummingbird, and I realized that the butterfly they were seeing was a symbol of their own transformation, that they were in this metamorphosis process, and their system was pinging them from the external back to the internal. And that's the miracle, is that all the time from within us and from deep within us are being presented the resources and the states that, were we to experience them, would begin to heal us. And it's coming all from within.
I love what you're touching on here, because the way I would kind of translate that into Walt ease is to say, if I can take something and apply it to myself in my own realm, no matter what it is, no matter what I experience with it, it's all valid data.
Yes. Yes.
And I actually picked the same lesson up with there's a woman I'm working with who is a shadow work type healer. She guides you through what's typically described as shadow work. And I don't remember how she phrased it. I had a session with her just yesterday, but she phrased it something like this: everything that comes to you in these sessions, because it's a very intuitive, almost psychic kind of a process. Everything that comes to you is valid, all of it. It's
Yes.
all valid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's pretty much what you're touching on here. No matter what it is that we are seemingly distracted by, it's all valid. It's all part of that same process. It all contributes. There's no such thing as an irrelevant, coincidental thing that has nothing to do with it, because it all has something to do with it.
Totally, totally. And the little adaptation we get is that in this both and world of everything valid, we're going to have certain reactions to one side of it or another. And in our approach avoidance system, we're going to say, "Ooh, I like that, and I don't like that." So on the scale, on the continuum of whatever it is, like, "Oh, that's a hummingbird, and they scare me because they go so fast." Or another part of it is they can stop and they can look at you, And so there are always these two sides. Gurdjieff said this, right, really clearly. He said, every stick has two ends. And we always have a reaction, either, "Ooh, that's something I like," or "That's something I don't like." And we are, as OI coaches, adept at facilitating people's realization of the side at first that they do like, and that those things are coming all the time. And the side that they don't like is getting so much press because of the negativity bias, and it's all about that, but it's not. That is, at best, only half the story. The other half that we're going to be looking for is, what's the side that's communicating the support that then would knit back the fabric of our being, so that then we could say, yes, now I have the bandwidth to include it all.
I like that. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're aware of Abraham Hicks's teachings, but I won't even try to explain it. If you're familiar with the book The Secret, they're tied to that law of attraction kind of thing.
Nice.
And one of the things, of course, lots of people use stick as a metaphor, as a way of explaining things, and you just did yourself. When you were doing that, it reminded me of the way that they use the word stick. For them, stick is a metaphor that describes what it is that you're actually attracting into your life. Because people tend to think typically in terms of opposites. So for most people, it's like good and evil, right and wrong, bad, good, all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But for them, the two-ended stick is thing and lack of thing.
Thing and lack of thing, like material and immaterial?
Like, it isn't necessarily material. It's whatever it is that you're desiring in your life. People think about law of attraction in terms of what they can attract into their life. So whatever it is you're trying to attract into your life, there's the thing end of it, and there's the lack end of it. The lack end of it is where you think you're focusing on the thing, but what you're actually focusing on is the fact that you don't have the thing.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right. So for them, the two-ended stick is, on the one hand, there's actually attracting the thing, and on the other hand, you're actually attracting the lack of the thing because you think you're focusing on the thing, but you're actually focused on the lack of it. And so that's why you
Yeah,
don't end up getting the thing. That's
yeah,
part of the whole teaching of how law of attraction works. And
love it.
the reason I like that particular metaphor is that it uses the stick idea in a way that doesn't treat it as opposites.
Yes,
Although, actually, truly, I think that is the true opposite. Thing and
right,
lack of thing is actually the true
right.
opposite. But more actively, it explains things in terms of how do you experience your life? How do you interact with the things in your life without being worried about what its opposite is, without being worried about, what's the contrary side, what's the polarity side of it, and so
Yes,
forth. Just what's the thing itself? What's it all about? The experience, the thing, the person, whatever it might be.
yes. I love it. This is really in the bailiwick of non-duality now, right? That,
Yeah,
we are
duality
working.
without duality.
Right, totally, totally. Which is, probably the way things work.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole concept of duality, that boy, I remember the first time that duality was presented to me, because that's something that comes up fairly frequently when you talk about law of attraction concepts.
Mhm.
It was almost thrust in my face as
Mm.
well. You have to realize that this whole duality thing it's all a great big it's an illusion, and you don't really want to take any of it seriously, and all this other kind of stuff. And I kept thinking to myself, why are we talking about duality? I don't understand.
Especially in such dualistic terms.
Yeah, right. So it confused me for the longest time until I finally realized, oh yeah, that's their expression of what they're thinking. It has nothing necessarily to do with the way I look at it.
Uh,
But because the topic came up, when it came time to understand things like the two-ended stick thing and so forth, it made it easier for me to appreciate what some of these teachings were, and then figure out, well, what part of it works for me, what part of it doesn't work, and how can I integrate that into my own healing? Because my own thing, I told you before we got started, and most of the listeners know this, I got this whole podcast started because some 13 years ago, I was in the depths of despair because my business 4 years prior to that had been wiped out, and I hadn't been able to recover. And I was trying to figure out, how to make all this stuff work. So since then, it's all been about me. It's been me trying to integrate all this stuff and learn all this stuff and figure stuff out. And oh, by the way, along the way, I've had a bunch of listeners who followed along with me, which was kind of fun and a little surprising at first. But nevertheless, it is kind of a description of how I ended up learning stuff.
yeah.
And those learnings that have come up along the way, I think we're finding a number of different ways that they are in alignment with the things that you guys teach at Organic Intelligence. And I'm curious about that, because you came at it from a different angle, very different angle, but we ended up in the same path. I'm thinking, well,
Right.
that's pretty damn cool.
How remarkable is that? And just as a testament, isn't it, that we're really actually all in the same big boat.
Pretty much,
we're
yeah,
really
right.
in this together. And
Yeah.
so I appreciate your emphasis on like curiosity and the learning process and sort of the joy of learning that you've talked about more than once here. And also just happiness in a way, and acceptance, the both and. There's so many of these themes that when you present them here and to your audience, I'm sure is just going to be deeply supportive. So I'm liking that that connection very much. Yeah.
That's one of the fun things about doing the show is we meet. You come on to the show as a guest, we meet and we interact, and then we find commonality, and we find differences too, but it happens quickly.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's amazing. Literally, we live in rabbit holes on this show. We don't spend a whole lot of time on the mainstream.
One living in rabbit holes. How is that a metaphor for spirituality? That's right?
I don't know. Around here, that is spirituality.
Oh,
Depends where
great
your
rabbit.
views are.
I was thinking that one of the other ideas that I wonder if there's correspondence in how you're thinking of things is that we're saying that as people get orientation on board, and we can practice this if you want, but one of the other things that we discover is that we are preferentially looking for the side of their experience that is unacknowledged, but that also feels well or that's
Mm.
positively valenced. Like
Mhm.
we're given that, okay, we are primarily oriented to what's wrong or trying to get away from what's wrong or trying to
Mm.
get what we think is, that which we want, and then we're suffering because we don't have it. So all of that is in the what's wrong area. And then that happens in some channel of experience, like the emotional channel or the thought channel or something. But what we do is we are looking in other channels for where a complement is that is positively valenced.
Mm.
So as I think about what I don't have, like reliable access to funds, like I may not pay rent this month.
Mm.
And on the other hand, there is an aspect of this that feels liberating. That is, I feel like, oh, I'm also free from the worry somehow. There's a part of me that's not fully worried about that. And when we take time with that state of being unworried, then the two sides begin to come together and they begin to resolve and create what we call that extra bandwidth. And so really we make use of the polar system in order to bring back the aspects of one's states or one's system that have been divorced from each other, and they get married again and live happily ever after.
Interesting that you described that, because one of the themes we often end up talking about here on the show has to do not only with polarity, but why we would choose to come into a life where there is that kind of polarity. Um, because it's become evident to us, however we want to think about it, one way or another, we ended up coming in here knowing, I mean, it's not like we were thrown in here blind. We knew where we were coming to. We knew we were going to deal with this. And the way I like to jokingly refer to it sometimes is to say, what the hell was I thinking? But that polarity is also the source of a great deal of learning, and it's a
Yeah.
great deal of education that's involved in it, and a great deal of understanding comes out of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, polarity, it's kind of like on the one hand, on the other hand, not surprisingly. But but seriously, the whole concept of polarity can play really whatever role you want to play. It's just going to be, what are you going to get out of it? What are you going to take from it?
Yeah. Yeah. And who are you going to take with you?
And who are you going to take with you? Yeah, right.
Uh, I think of that, I described from my youngest recollection, like having a larger concern for people. And we call organic intelligence this kind of bodhisattva community, which is where service to someone else is simultaneously love for oneself.
Mm.
That there is a union really of compassion for self and others, which
Mhm.
is where we started this whole thing.
Pretty much, yeah. That's cool. Speaking of where you started, where are you going with it? Like you've very eloquently described and defined what organic intelligence is about, what some of the main tenets are, and so forth. But where do you see this evolving to?
As soon as I started this, I started it with the idea of my not being around it anymore.
Oh, okay.
So, we're all mortal, and so the intention really is that I've been investing most of my time and energy in our senior members. And
Mm.
so really it's the cultivation and the mentorship of our senior members who then are going to be teaching the next generation, and they will know how to teach the next generation. So where we are going with this, we're going to go as far as we can with it.
Mm.
And that is by sharing this as broadly and helping as many people as we can with the specific idea of passing this on from generation to generation.
What's the response been? I mean, because you've been working with, how long have you been doing this, by the way? How long has the organization been in existence?
I think we landed our trademark a little bit over a dozen years ago,
Okay.
and I started using the term probably 20 years ago.
Okay.
And the response is what your response has been. The response is universally like, "This is so sensible. This makes such sense. What a great idea. Why haven't I heard about this?" And so
Mm.
we are not marketers. We're sort of lovers and learners. And so that's we're just really trusting the organic unfolding of things. And
Mm.
so we're back to the mystery, aren't we? Like
Yeah.
jumping off, we don't know where it's going to go. We just feel like as long as we are true to the ethos of care and trust in the unfolding of our nature with the right support, that we're on the right track.
But let's zero in a little bit on some of the practical ways that the people you've worked with have ended up applying this in their lives and some of the experiences that have come out of it. Look, give it. I mean, you can't obviously get into specific cases and names and dates and all that kind of thing, but give us some idea of how does this actually tend to play out with your clients?
Well, actually, I can name names and dates.
Oh, you can. Oh, well, all right. Maybe you have releases. I don't
know. because some of them have like made recordings. I was thinking of Ryan,
oh, okay.
who was like, I've been struggling with OCD for decades. And then I found this thing because I was I was focusing on my thoughts, my feelings, and I began to get orientation. And he said it's the only thing that has actually made a difference. And so whether it's physical or psychological symptoms, we have good luck somehow with people with chronic fatigue syndrome.
Really?
Really people kind of recharge that way. People who are meditation teachers find their way to us
Okay.
and amplify some of their capacities there in our courses. And we have a community of people who just care about other people. And so when we get together, there's a lot of sharing and warmth. And the other place that we've invested a lot in is in our BIPOC community. We have a team of BIPOC facilitators that are just experts in organic intelligence and in facilitation, and they're creating whole cohorts in what we call the End of Trauma course, which is our resilience program, and whole cohorts that we sponsor absolutely without any fee. And so we haven't figured out the business model of it all, but so far we are doing the right thing, I think, and so we're paid back in a lot of joy.
Well, that's always a good thing to get paid back in. Let's talk though a little bit about the different ways that people apply this and either get the benefit or perhaps not get the benefit, because I mean, there's no solution that's going to apply perfectly for everybody.
Right.
So when does this tend to work well and when does this not tend to work as well?
Yep. I think that the value of our model is that it's a developmental model. And so it has different approaches based on our assessment of the physiological moment of the person. And so a lot of folks, and I did this at the beginning of my career, you find something that works and then you start to preach it. Oh, hey, I was in somatic psychology. Just feel your body, sense your body. That's the solution. Or, oh,
you just described how we get guests all the time. I mean, that's literally where all guests come from.
Yes. Well, thankfully, I see that there are a lot of guests. So you have a lot of avenues of exploration.
People have had a lot of experiences they want to share. It's a great thing,
Yes, it is a great thing. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And so what we do is we try to attune the approach to the needs of the person in that moment. And so that's the thing. Rather than coming with, hey, this is the approach, and now you got to try it. We hear from the person and say, based on what you're saying, have you considered this? And we use what we call a free association conversation. So we just get into a session and we're going to have a freestyle conversation exactly like we're having right here about whatever the client wants to talk about. And we have a map. We have a map that says, oh, where are they roughly on this scale of physiological functioning? And we can tell that by how they're thinking, how they're behaving, what the emotional range is, and a whole bunch of things. And then we're able to then attune to their needs, be with them where they are, and then offer reflections that they're able to assimilate. And that changes them. And it's completely dependent on where they are, rather than, hey, a one-size-fits-all thing. I've got this somatic solution. I've got this emotional solution. I've got this, here, do this imagery thing, and that'll make you better. Or, go into cold water for a while, and then we got you, it is diverse in that way. And so our success, I think, really hinges on that. Our baseline is attunement. and presence and relationship with people where they are. And then within that, being able to recognize what their needs are and how their system is already moving them to the next step. And I think that's the key, how their system is already moving them to the next developmental step. And we can recognize it, we can reflect it, we can amplify it so the next step becomes easier for them.
I can see how it's going to be a very high success rate when you approach it that way. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Right.
Let's also talk though more specific physically, because one of the reasons people pursue wellness, I mean, the kinds of wellness we're talking about have been, again, fairly abstract. That's the way we've been presenting most of what we've been talking about here.
Yep.
But people are looking for physical wellness in their lives.
Yeah.
How has this actually played out in terms of people's physical wellness?
I think there are several ways because, like I mentioned, like we work with a lot of people who have fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, but also chemical sensitivities and a whole range of things. And the key to this all is that our biology, under the right with the right support, will be self-organizing, meaning that I don't have to know a whole lot. I don't have to be super smart. I just have to recognize how an individual's own system is offering some support. And sometimes that means that they're looking out the window at a butterfly. Sometimes it means they remember the image of their grandmother's hands. Sometimes it means that they're having this thought like, oh, I was just thinking the other day about that there are always these messages, these postcards from home coming to our systems that just simply need some spotlight. And given that spotlight, they will warm and they will create healing and balance for the individual. And like I said, that's for physical symptoms, it's for psychological issues, and likewise for spiritual growth and development. And so whatever and wherever the person is, we aim to be able to help them out.
Part of what I was thinking of when I was asking that question was my own development, my own path, because particularly in the last few years, I've encountered situations, places where I ended up with physical injuries, physical, not so much traumas per se, but like for instance, about a year and a half ago, for the first time in my life, I started experiencing, I think you could honestly describe them as migraine headaches. I'd never had migraines in my life.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, okay, where's this coming from? And, you know, first I went to the MD. That was a mistake. Then I went to the naturopath, and the naturopath was trying to lead me through dietary solutions. And I got a little bit of benefit there, but it didn't really do it. And I just kept following my path and was also following what I knew about how I learn, how I absorb, how I do that bridge between the internal and the external. And I ended up getting a piece of advice from a good friend who's a retired physical therapist, who said, go get checked for cervical spine and TMJ issues.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be it. That turned out to be the source of the thing.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
So my point being, it was a combination of work that I've done on myself, my connections with others, and what those connections fed to me, and then taking them and absorbing them and applying them, that led me to be able to basically overcome something that medical science would not have been able to overcome.
Yeah.
And I've had physical injuries. I had some pretty serious trauma to my Achilles, my ankles, and so forth. A number of reasons why that happened, and I ended up going to physical therapy for that. But the mind-body connection actually played a bigger role in the healing than the physical therapy did, although the physical therapy was integral to it.
Yep.
You know, so I think about these kinds of things when we have this kind of conversation, and I know there are other people who've done similar kinds of stuff. They've been able to overcome stuff that medical science says you really can't do. Yeah. I mean, I actually overcame something that medical science clearly says you can't do. I overcame macular degeneration. That's incurable, according to the optometrist and the ophthalmologist.
That's right. Yeah.
And actually, my eye doctor told me 2 or 3 years ago, I don't think you actually ever had it. Now, by your mind, they've been telling me for 15 years that I had
it. Right. That's the only possible explanation.
That's right. It can't possibly be that you got better. That never happens. So.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And we find that in our sessions. What I hear when you say that is a system that is more organizing. It is self-organizing. Like we have tons of people that come in. They're like, oh, I've tried everything, and I've gone to all the doctors. I've gone to nothing has worked. And we're like, well, let's just restart. Let's reset. And then the end of therapy is they go, well, I don't know. I was seeing my naturopath and my acupuncturist. I don't think I need sessions anymore. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. Because their own system finds the resources that they're needing. And that's what we love, is that their own intelligence is bright and brilliant and happening and retrieving and finding the help, whether it's nutritional, whether it's medical, the medical field, or any place. Whether it's a shaman or a magic mushroom, they're finding the thing that will, in synergy, help their system reorganize, and heal. And we think that's the basic, that's our baseline. Our system wants to heal, and we just are trying to get in sync with that impulse.
By the way, I have an eye doctor appointment next month coming up, the annual appointment. And the last appointment, my eye doctor told me that I was starting to develop cataracts. And so we're going to have cataract surgery at some point. I said, don't bet on it.
Remember that macular degeneration diagnosis?
And I could tell, once he told me that was going on, it actually explained a few things. I understood why I was experiencing certain things. And I can tell that they have not completely gone away yet. And that there's still room to be worked on there. But on the other hand, I can't honestly say I dove into it from the beginning of my last visit. I started looking at it like a month ago. It's like, okay, I got to start doing it. I know the appointment's coming. I better really start doing something. And I could tell there's a little bit of improvement, but not nearly enough. So he's probably going to give me the speech, right? Well, you're going to have to do something with the cataract pretty soon. And I'll say, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Brilliant. Oh, that's
but it's an example of, this is real world stuff that we humans deal with. I mean, it doesn't get a lot of headlines, but this is the kind of stuff that people routinely deal with. And the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual approach that you bring to it makes all the difference. That's really what organic intelligence seems to be about.
Yeah, it is, exactly. And it's in large part thanks to so many of the teachers and helpers that have helped me along the way. And as you were describing your eye situation, I thought of one of the main sort of mentors that I had was in clinical psychology school. He's a former dean of the school. His name was Lee Edward Travis, and he taught a class called self-healing. Dr. Travis also was the first person in the United States to register the EEG. So he's a brilliant physician and psychologist. So and so he would talk about bad habits, and he would look over at me one class and he would say, "What about you, Steve? You have any bad habits?" I said, "Well, Dr. Travis, none that I want to give up." But he said he was having some eye issue. He was 92, and so he said, I just envision my eye. And he said, I say to my eye, you're such a good eye. You've seen so many wonderful things. You bring in so many beautiful images to me. I'm so grateful. And there's so much love and warmth that I would send to you. And he said, I'll talk to my eye. That. Right?
Yeah. That's really cool. I love too who he was, actually, that person saying that, because that's not the typical story you hear.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
As so often happens, I look up at the clock and I say, oh my God, the hour is up. This is not good. Because I
plan to be here for another time, as you like.
We're definitely having fun on this, but we do have a couple things we like to do. There's normally 3 of them, but one involves the co-host and she's not here, so we'll have to let that one go. But one of them is kind of vital, kind of critical, which is, what if somebody wants to find out about you guys and maybe reach out and learn more and talk to you guys? We should probably tell them how to do that.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, organicintelligence.org. That's our online home, organicintelligence.org. So that's the best place to find us. And and reach out. And my email is steven@organicintelligence.org. Just reach out and be in touch. We love conversation, as you can tell.
which is a wonderful thing. And we'll also, Jen will make sure she'll put the link into the show notes too, to make it easy for people to find. So
thank you. They can find the individual programs for resilience and this healing for themselves. It's called the End of Trauma course, and called the End of Trauma because we believe in the end of trauma as trauma being the guiding principle of therapy. We propose instead that we would participate in this wholeness instead. And let's end trauma as the focus, because that's just more of the what's wrong attention. And then secondly, they could become a coach. They could become an OI coach. We have a year-long immersion in this process, and you could become an organic intelligence coach and do a little healing on oneself and others that way.
So cool. I mean, they can go to the site and they can actually start getting some stuff and applying it right away before they even talk to you guys. That's very good.
Big time. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Normally I turn to my co-host at this point and say, how do you tie all this together? Because my co-host has a perspective I don't have. I'm the one primarily asking the questions. So, that kind of affects my viewpoint. But what I will do is I won't try to play that role because that's not appropriate for me to play. But what I will do is I'll say, I love how much dovetail there has been between what you guys do and what we talk about here. And honestly, I didn't really expect that was going to happen. I mean, I had no anticipation of that at all, but there's a lot of dovetail here. It's really very cool. I love it.
It's a pleasure, really. Such joy to be able to connect like this and to feel also our partnership in sharing about well-being, and the compassion that's behind that. We'll be at Heaven's Gate and they'll go, okay, hey, come on up, and we'll go, hey, we got the whole audience we need to bring with us here.
I love it. That's great. One final thing. This is something I've been doing for the last few years, and it definitely applies to you because we live in the 21st century where you're in California. We're on two different coasts from each other, and we're able to have this conversation. I mean, I have a co-host in the UK. I have one in Alberta, Canada. I have one in Richmond, Virginia. I mean, we have guests coming in from Australia. It's wonderful that we can do this. We couldn't do that 30 years ago. We can do it now, right? And it's fun, and we can share social media posts, and we can write blog posts, and we can share information in all kinds of different ways so that, as we have things that we've discovered along the way, we can make podcasts and we can say, hey, here's some cool stuff. Maybe you can use it. And one of the things that's come out of that is we now have followerships, right? People follow others and they learn from them and so forth. They pick things up, they apply them in their lives. And the people they've followed often have no idea what happened and certainly never get the credit for it. And that's why I said, whoa, wait a minute, we can do something about that.
Wow.
So Steve, on behalf of those people you've never met and never seen and never will meet and never will see, who you've been helping in ways you didn't even know about just by doing these podcasts and doing the other work that you do to get the word out. On their behalf, thank you for what you're doing because you're making a difference in this world.
Wow, thank you so much. That's a dream come true. Thank you. Yeah.
So has this interview. It's been also a dream come true. So thank you for joining me, and best of luck with what you guys are doing. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.